CJ Stroud has a new offensive line and wide receiver room to help him recover coming off a sophomore slump. We dig into the biggest Texan storylines as we head into 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. And when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with the NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for the Sporting News. Check us out, sportingnews.com.
We are going to start our team reviews. So going through all 32 teams, their offseason overview, what they've done this year to make themselves either better or worse, and then give our fantasy outlook and predictions for their 2025 season. We're going to start with the Houston Texans today and then get through the rest of the AFC South, and we'll decide, which teams we'll go to next after that. But there's some really big storylines here with the Texans, especially after the draft, right? Because CJ Stroud had his big sophomore slump after a great rookie season. So will he bounce back? Will his new wide receivers that they got him this offseason help with that? And Christian Kirk, and then the two wide receivers they drafted early. And then lastly here with the running game, does Joe Mixon have enough in the tank? So those are the top three storylines we're going to be keying on today. About the Houston Texans. So let's start with CJ Stroud, because last year, terrible fantasy season for him, right? And then right now he's ranked as the quarterback 12 in consensus rankings. How good do you feel about Stroud going into his third year? Do you think he can bounce back into the top 12?
Yeah, it's really hard to look at him as a guy we're targeting in drafts, right? Because we're looking at Caleb Williams and all his weapons. We're looking at Drake May being upgraded, and he's a running quarterback. We look at Jordan Love. He got a wide receiver in the first round. Dak Prescott, you got to weigh, do you feel comfortable with the current situation with yet another offensive change and not really adding the weapons? And you consider Kyler Murray a running quarterback around this spot. So there are a lot of guys, and then you throw in Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, with his running. So then it gets to be a bit of a crowd here. So I don't know if he's going to retain you the value you're looking for if you take him too high. I think anywhere between the bottom of the QB1s to like the mid-range QB2s is where he's kind of being taken and ranked in most places at this stage, because everyone's not sure exactly what to do with him. And there's a lot of variables that are in play. He's got a new offense coordinator, Nick Callie, brings the Rams system over. It's a little bit like the 49ers system they had with Bob Slowick, but just a little bit different. So the concepts are changing there. And then you blew up the receiving core again. And look, we may have added more questions here, because last year at this time we were feeling good, right? Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, we were hearing positive reports of him being on the field and not having a big issue. But then injuries happen there. Diggs tears his ACL. Nico Collins even misses some time. So everything kind of blew up here for CJ Stroud. But now you have new variables, because you have Christian Kirk coming off injury. He's on a new team. He's learning this new offense. You got two rookies in the mix. Dell's future is uncertain. So you have Higgins and Noel coming in here as the guys they drafted. And I'm just not sure where you get everything. And then on top of everything else, Stroud is not running quarterback. So I lean to like more RB 15 to 20 is where he should be right now. That's kind of exactly where he finished last year. He was actually not as good even in average scoring. He was in the 20s at QB. So this is a big gap to bridge, especially with a lot of competition at this position. So I would say, look, as excited we might be about Stroud's changes, I think it's better for reality. It'll show up there more so than in fantasy.
Yeah, I think the big thing will be, how does this offensive line gel, right? Because last year he was sacked the second most times in the NFL, took the second most quarterback hits as well. And they did change up pretty like a large chunk of this offensive line. Now, Laremy Tunsil probably was their best pass blocking offensive lineman, and they traded him away, but he did just get penalized a ton. Shaq Mason wasn't very good. They got rid of him. Kenyon Green allowed a ton of pressures and sacks too. So like they're working here to fix it. They brought in Laken Tomlinson and traded for Ed Ingram and then drafted a tackle in the second round. Like, we'll see what this all becomes, but that definitely is key here, like giving him more time and it not being so stressful and getting pressured so much. But then also, I think a big thing we're overlooking is just how much Nico Collins was off the field last year, and CJ Stroud splits with him on and off the field. So according to Next Gen Stats, Stroud had 337 dropbacks with Nico Collins on the field last year and 284 dropbacks with him off the field. So that's pretty close to a 50-50 split. And his completion percentage with Collins on the field was nearly 67%, while it dropped to 58% with Collins off the field. His pass yards per attempt dropped by a whole full yard. He had 14 touchdowns on those dropbacks with Collins and only 6 on the ones without him on the field. And his passer rating, I mean, just atrocious without Collins on the field. And then also the quarterback pressure percent with how much he was pressured. With Nico Collins on the field, he was pressured about 35% of dropbacks, but that goes all the way up to 43% with him off the field. So I do think just Nico Collins alone being healthy is a huge upgrade. And then you have a Christian Kirk who hopefully can step into that Stephon Diggs role, or, maybe it's the Jaden Higgins that steps into that and Christian Kirk kind of steps into that Tank Dell slot role. But I just think Jaden Higgins added to this mix and Christian Kirk, and we'll see what they can get out of Jalen Noel, their third round pick, will be huge for Stroud to bounce back next year.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's enough to go around there to really feel excited because, again, when we're dealing with pocket passers and when you look at, again, they kind of duct taped the offensive line a bit. Cam Robinson had been okay with the Jaguars. He was a very competent starter, but then he went to the Vikings almost kind of in a similar situation. The emergency that happened with Christian Darrisaw, they had to go pick him up and kind of have somebody decent left tackle. So Cam Robinson and Trent Brown, as far as veteran starters go, you could do a lot worse than that, but I don't think it's something that we're going to say, oh, this is going to help him throw the ball a lot more downfield. And I think they'll have some of those concepts here with Callie taking over. That's why they got two guys, one much like Collins in Jaden Higgins, and one who has a lot of explosive qualities in the slot versus Christian Kirk in Jalen Noel. So I think that's why they did that. They want to get a little bit more downfield. But if your offensive line isn't all that much better and you're not going to get anything again from the running game with Stroud, I think Stroud, again, this team can win this division again and be improved in that sense with their defense playing better. This is better complementary offense. But in terms of, we're looking at actually fantasy, right? Producing and make us feel good week in and week out about what he can do. I don't think you can trust Stroud like that. I think he's going to be more of a matchup-based quarterback this year, and you just have to live with it because, again, no cheat code available here. While you have competition such as Fields, who definitely has the cheat code in his favor, and Herbert could do a little bit more running. So these are all guys that definitely could put up a few more rushing points. Even Drake May, right? He ranked right around there. He was known for his athletic ability. So, again, that's the unfortunate situation, Stroud. There's a lot of variables and change, a lot of competition that adds up to. Just be careful. I think he's not a bad guy if you're someone who likes to platoon QBs or stream them. He's not a bad guy to have, but again, beware of tougher matchups.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the defense, our passing defense was really good last year, and they're young, and they could be really good, which would hurt CJ Stroud even more in fantasy. And I think right now his ranking at quarterback 17 is actually pretty fair. And in super flex leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, like, I'm going to be a lot more enticed to take him. And then besides that, probably just looking at him as a streamer for 2025. Although I do think it'll be a much better season for him this upcoming year than it was in his second season. We are going to get to those playmakers now, those pass catchers in the Texans receiver room. They have a lot of new guys that I mentioned, but who will, like, Nico Collins is the clear cut number 1, right? But who's going to be that number 2 target? That's a tough question to answer right now, but we're going to try to do that for you right after a quick break.
This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with the top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable for you and your business. Again, this is how you find the right talent. Again, there's all kinds out there, especially looking to add new projects, and a lot of qualified candidates out there. So you can find them here, and it's fast and easy hiring that you can expect. Free, simple process for you if you're trying to get someone on board quickly. It's cost-effective growth. Instead of going full-time, you get a freelancer, and they're going to help you for whatever you need to boost your business very efficiently and effectively. Now, visit Upwork.com and post your job for free. That's right, Upwork. That's UPWORK, Upwork.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, Michelle, it is time to get to our next pressing take about the Houston Texans. You have Nico Collins. Let's just set up the table here. Wide receiver 7 last year in average scoring. Of course, it was less because he missed some time. Total wide receiver 22, but only because he missed time. But we know he was an elite wide receiver 1 in fantasy once again after his breakout year the year before with Stroud. But then you have to keep looking down and scroll and look for the next wide receiver ranked. It's Christian Kirk. He's at number 50 in half-point PPR. Then you get to the rookie, Jaden Higgins, at 66, and then I don't think you want to look any more of that right now. But it's like Nico Collins, and then what do we do here? There's nobody else. And is there going to be someone else, or is it just the Collins show?
I don't think it'll be just the Collins show. I think that'd be very bad for Stroud and this offense overall. I mean, Nico Collins is great and he's going to get his numbers, but he's also not the type of guy that needs 10 to 12 targets to get his numbers, right? He can have a massive game with just 6 targets. I mean, last year he was fantastic on a per game basis in Collins, averaging 84 receiving yards per game, 4th most in the league. And I think his consensus ranking right now, wide receiver 7, completely fair. It's just going to be based on preference between him or going with someone riskier like Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. But I do really like Nico Collins this year. And then going for that second guy, I mean, last year it was Tank Dell that wasn't doing much even before his terrible injury in week 14. And he's expected to miss this year, like we mentioned. So I don't think I'm interested in Christian Kirk at all, because we've had so many years of his career now. He's also had a very terrible time staying healthy over the last couple of years too, with multiple injuries. But it's like, you know exactly what you're going to get from him, even if he is the second guy in this offense. It's going to be like 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? I'd rather take a shot on Jaden Higgins, who has a huge build, just like Nico Collins, who was great at Iowa State, who's drafted 34th overall. I mean, that's an early draft pick to use. So I do think they're going to get him on the field immediately and try to get him involved. I think that's the guy I'm going to take a shot on instead of a Christian Kirk.
Yeah, and I'm going to second the do not draft Christian Kirk. You can put him on the list right now. You're not going to get anything that you got from him in his best days with the Jaguars, or even going back to the Cardinals. You're not going to get that from Christian Kirk. He's a guy that, keep in mind, we're looking at Tank Dell's injury. This guy's also coming off an injury, shortened, and he's had a couple years kind of derailed. He's a littler guy. I think he's probably had his best NFL production, and it's behind him. Now, the guy that I'm actually excited for, and based on a lot of factors, is not necessarily Higgins, because I think what hurts Higgins is everyone says, okay, he's a Collins clone, but that actually might hurt him, right? If he struggles to get open on the outside a little bit, they might be like, okay, I'll just throw to Collins. He's open. He's the guy I trust a little bit more if I'm Stroud, right, in those bigger situations. And you pointed out those numbers. That doesn't just come from Collins being better than everything else they had, but also Stroud having more confidence and wanting to throw to Collins and put up those numbers. So I think that actually might hurt Higgins in the short term. I think in the long term it might be good. But Jalen Noel, I look at the concepts of the Rams passing game. I think they want a little bit of explosiveness from the slot. And that's what Noel can provide that Christian Kirk cannot. He's more of a short area slot, and especially slowed down with the injuries. So I'm not going to say I'm going to go crazy and draft Noel. I think he's a guy we watch for throughout the season. Like, it's definitely open between Higgins and Noel for one of these guys to emerge, right? So, again, I'm going to put these rookies on the watch list. I'm going to take Kirk off, no interest. If I get down to needing a fifth wide receiver, not touching Kirk. If I need to take a last pick in the draft, I'm going to take a shot at Higgins or no, at wide receiver to fill out my roster, right? That's a lot more what I'm going to look at. So I say go for the upside. I like Noel a little bit more because, again, he can displace Kirk a little bit and be more comfortable in this offense and maybe have a role that's a little bit more consistent in the end. Like right now, Higgins might be the guy. So it's a little bit maybe thinking outside the box here. But again, I'd rather stash, draft the rookies late, depending on how big your league is and how you draft, or put them on your waiver wire radar than have anything to do with any other receiver that isn't Nico Collins.
Yeah, with Jalen Noel, probably be hard for him to get on the field unless there is an injury to Christian Kirk, at least early on in his rookie year.
That's
But
why late watch.
Yeah, there are a lot of injuries.
Kirk's always hurt. So.
Yeah, exactly. Now finishing up here with Nico Collins for this wide receiver room. Going back to him. So I mentioned he's the wide receiver 7 right now, kind of smashed in between Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. If you had to rank those 3 guys with who you would want to take to be your, wide receiver 1 week in and week out that you're plugging in, how would you rank those guys?
Yeah, I think I do like more the Thomas Neighbors camp. Like they're more interchangeable. We talked about them. We debated that, and we both landed on Thomas just because he's got a little bit more stable quarterback situation, as we know, going into the season, versus Neighbors is now in a slot machine, 3 guys that potentially could be a starter. So I think we went Thomas. The Neighbors is just too talented to put behind Collins. I like Collins a lot. He's very talented in his own right. But even the quarterback uncertainty, I put in Neighbors. So I think I go Thomas, Neighbors, Collins. And I feel okay with that. Again, I want to see Collins and how he responds in this new offense a little bit as well. And see also Stroud get back on track with his play.
Yeah, it is interesting because I do think Nico Collins is the safest option of that bunch to be a top 10 wide receiver. Like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., they could have a massive ball off. And
ceiling guy versus floor, for sure.
Yeah, and Nico Collins, like I would be actually shocked if he wasn't top 10 in average points. Like even last year, he was dealt with that hamstring injury, came back, was definitely not as great after the injury. I mean, he averaged 18 points per game from weeks 1 through 5 before the injury, and then went down to 12.3 in the 7 games coming back after that hamstring injury. So, but I would be completely fine with Nico Collins as my wide receiver 1 and taking him there. And I do think he is safer, but it is very enticing to take the guys like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors who have that ability to be the overall wide receiver 1. I think that's kind of the difference here between those guys. We are going to now go into Joe Mixon because do you think we need to talk about Dalton Schultz, right? Does Dalton Schultz matter?
He's the fork topic, so you can debate that in your mind. If you're really caring about should he draft Dalton Schultz, I mean, you can have fun with that.
Just draft anybody else besides.
We got to do the top 3 here. These are your top 3. So we want the pressing questions because I think this is a bigger question: what to do with Joe Mixon in drafts. So looking forward to breaking that down. He's a hard one. He's one of the hardest things to break down, and we'll have that to end our show here.
Yeah, he definitely is. We'll get to that right after a quick break. All right, so Joe Mixon, wild season because it started off so hot, right? It was like we didn't know Joe Mixon had all of this in him going from the Bengals to the Texans, where the Bengals, it was very inconsistent too, but just what he was doing for the first half of the season with the Texans from weeks 1 through 11, averaged 21.5 points per game and half PPR. I mean, he was killing it, but then he completely fell apart in the second half of the season at 8.5 points per game. And it wasn't even due to the ankle injury because he came back from the ankle injury, in like week 6, he was fine. Like it didn't look like it was slowing him down. And then all of a sudden it was just like that end of the year. It was really the entire Texans offense that was just so poor. So maybe that's what it had to do with Joe Mixon, but he ended up being the running back 13 in total points, running back 9 on average. And right now he's sitting as running back 15 in consensus rankings behind Chuba Hubbard and James Cook. Is that too low for Joe Mixon when, again, I just said he was running back 13, running back 9 in average? And was it just the offense falling apart that made him fall apart at the end of the year?
Yeah, let's talk about some pros and cons here with Joe Mixon in terms of his value for this year, sustaining when healthy the production he had in 2024. The pros are there was not a lot of competition drafted. They only took Woody Marks late in the draft out of USC, a decent runner, but I was kind of surprised he actually got drafted. He was a decent, productive Trojan, but no one that you would say we're going to want to add as a priority, like a DJ Giddens or RJ Harvey or any of those guys that went earlier. So when you look at this room, right, you have Dario Ogunbowale, Damian Pierce, and also Marks behind Mixon. So this is, there's not a lot there. We've already seen Mixon being favored over Pierce with the overall coaching staff. But the other thing you have is the Rams system. They tend to favor one back. We've seen it with Kyren Williams. That's what Callie knows, right, from Sean McVay. They want to go with one back as much as possible. So that's another pro in Mixon's favor. And I think some of the issues they had with their offensive line with Tunsil, I think they actually might be better in run blocking this year. So those are all the three pros. The cons are his age. Is he going to wear down a little bit? Is the offense going to go through some growing pains a little bit with the new scheme? And is it easier to take away in the running game, maybe, with not worrying about people as much in the passing game? I'm not sure. But the pros seem to outweigh the cons. So what I'm going to say is, don't be too aggressive. Don't expect the same production here. I mean, RB 15, I think that's adjusted, right, for what you think. Because he was RB 13 last year in total scoring, RB 9. So you've already adjusted. You built that into his price that you're dropping him into RB 2. Now, personally, would I drop him maybe a few spots later? I could, maybe, right? But to me, he's just outside of the top 12. So I think he could finish anywhere from like 13 to 25. It would not surprise me, right? Because he could break down. He's gotten a lot of volume in his time with Cincinnati and Houston. So it is hard, Michelle, so hard. But I'm going to lean toward just kind of the industry has it right here. And I think you want to temper your expectations for him as an RB2. He could end up one of the better RB2s. I think that seems to be the sweet spot for him versus RB1.
Yeah, I just feel like we know exactly what we're going to get from him, right? It's going to be the 1,200 scrimmage yards because he always gets that. He's going to probably miss a couple games, but he also, I mean, he has been a touchdown machine. Even last year with missing a few games, he still scored 12 touchdowns. And like, that's what it's what he can do. He has 49 touchdowns since 2021. Only Derrick Henry has more among running backs. So like, he definitely knows how to get into the end zone. And if this Houston offense can fix themselves and get into scoring opportunities more like they were not at the end of last year, like, he's going to be a good value. You mentioned the age. Yeah, he'll be 29. That's a worry. And I think the bigger worry is not really the age. It's the amount of carries he has on his body. Over 1,800 career carries. It's the second most by any player on a current NFL roster, behind only Derrick Henry, but he doesn't have the build of Derrick Henry, right? No. Like, Derrick Henry's a beast of a man. He's not human. Whatever Derrick Henry does, like, that's not what we want to compare it to. So that is what the worry comes to. Ezekiel Elliott has the third most career, or actually the second most, one more carry than Joe Mixon among just active running backs in the league right now, but he's not on a roster. But we saw how Elliott broke down so quickly, right? For 1 second, he was still a really good running back, and then all of a sudden he was just not usable. I do think Joe Mixon probably has one more good year in him, though. Like, I'm completely fine with his running back 15 rank cost. And like, the fact that Breece Hall is still going ahead of Joe Mixon, I do find kind of absurd.
Yeah, I think what you do here with Joe Mixon, you have to go in knowing this, and you also have to go in knowing, look, between Pierce, I guess by default, but between Pierce, Ogunbowale, and Woody Marks, it could be just an ugly committee if they have to go this way, because I don't think they're going to trust any of those guys. Ogunbowale came up as kind of receiving third down type with the Buccaneers, so I don't think he can hold up. Damian Pierce was drafted, remember, for the old zone blocking system they used to have, so it's very confusing, right? So I think, again, make sure if you draft Joe Mixon as your RB2, don't wait too long to get an RB3 with some upside, right? One of those rookies we've talked about, like a Travion Henderson or someone like that, that has some upside that you need to stash right away. I think right after Mixon. You need to hedge your bets a little bit with Mixon. Then you can feel a little bit more comfortable taking him as an RB2. But again, you're not going to find a direct handcuff. Things could drop off really bad. You could get very less in value. So I'm leaning towards, again, on the lower side with Mixon, because I want a little bit more upside from that position. But Michelle's right. I mean, the drop off at running back, that's the funny thing, is it can just be sharp fast and just out of nowhere. And it's not out of nowhere. It can develop and build, but then you just have the bottom drop out, and that can definitely happen. With Mixon, so hedge your bets a little bit. Don't just, I got an RB2, set and forget it because of what he did last year as an RB1.
That will do it for our three biggest storylines on the Houston Texans. We will be getting into the Jacksonville Jaguars on tomorrow's show. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.